On an average, a healthy human breathes 12 to 16 times per minute. The volume of air involved in breathing movements can be estimated by the using a spirometer, which helps in clinical assessment of pulmonary functions. And an average lung can hold about 6 liters of air, in which very a small amount is used for during the breathings. The volume of air held by the lungs is called respiratory volumes. The different combination of the lungs volume is called respiratory capacity. And this is now we'll discuss the respiratory volume and the capacity. Tidal volumes of air, volume of air inspired or expired during a normal respiration, it is approx half liter. That is, a healthy man can inspire or expire approx 6 to 8 liter of air per minute. Inspiratory reserve volumes, additional volume of air a person can inspire by a forceful inspiration. This averages 2500 to 3000 ml. Expiratory reserve volumes, this additional volume of air a person can expire by a forcible expirations. This averages 1000 to 1100 ml. And next is the residual volume. Volume of air remaining in the lung even after a forcible expiration. This averages 1100 ml to 1200 ml. And next is the inspiratory capacity. Total volume of air a person can inspire after a normal expirations. This includes tidal volume and the inspiratory reserve volumes. And expiratory capacity, total volume of air a person can expire after a normal inspiration. This includes tidal volume and expiratory reserve volumes. And next is the functional residual capacity, FRC. This is the volume of air that will remain in the lungs after a normal expiration. This includes ERV plus RV. And vital capacity, the maximum volume of air. This is the functional residual capacity. And vital capacity, the maximum volume of air a person can breathe in after a forced expiration. This includes ERV, tidal volumes, IRV, or the maximum volume of air a person can breathe out after a forced expirations. And total lung capacity, the total volume of air accommodated in the lungs at the end of the forced inspirations. This includes residual volume, ERV, tidal volumes, IRV, or vital capacity plus residual volumes. So these are the different respiratory volumes and the capacities. Now discuss the exchange of gases. And swimmers, long distance runners, cyclists, others athletes can increase the respiratory volumes and capacities. Now we'll discuss the exchange of gases. Alveoli are the primary sites of exchange of gases. Exchange of gases also occurs between blood and the tissues. Oxygen and carbon dioxide are exchanged in these sites by simple diffusion, mainly based on the pressure or concentration gradients. Solubility of the gases as well as the thickness of the membranes involved in diffusion are also important factors that can affect the rate of diffusion. Pressure contributed by an individual gas in a mixture of gases is called partial pressure and is represented as PO2 for oxygen and PCO2 for the carbon dioxides. And partial pressure of these two gases in the atmospheric air and the two sites of diffusions can be discussed. This is the diagrammatic representation of exchange of gases at the alveolus and the body tissues with blood and transport of oxygen and carbon dioxides. So, as the solubility of the carbon dioxide is 20 to 25 times higher than that of the oxygen, the amount of CO2 that can diffuse through the diffusion membranes per unit difference in partial pressure is much higher compared to the oxygens. the diffusion membrane. Now I'll discuss the this transport of gases. Blood is the medium of transport for oxygen and carbon dioxide. About 97% of the oxygen is transported by the RBC in the blood. The remaining 3% of the O2 is carried in a dissolved state through the plasma. Nearly 20 to 25% of the CO2 is transported by the RBC, whereas 75% of it is carried as bicarbonate. About 7% of the CO2 is carried in a dissolved state through the plasma. Now we'll discuss the transport of oxygen. Hemoglobin is red colored iron containing pigment present in the RBC. O2 can bind with the hemoglobin in a reversible manner to form a oxyhemoglobin. Each hemoglobin molecule can carry a maximum of 4 molecules of oxygen. Binding of oxygen with the hemoglobin is the primary related to the partial pressure of oxygen. Partial pressure of CO2, hydrogen ion concentration and temperature are the other factors which can interfere with this binding. Sigmoid curve is obtained when the percentage of saturations of hemoglobin with the O2 is plotted against the PO2. This curve is called the oxygen dissociation curve and is highly useful in studying the effect of factors like PCO2, hydrogen ion concentrations, or binding of O2 with the hemoglobins. And alveoli where there is high PO2, low PCO2, lesser hydrogen concentrations, and lower temperature, the factors are all favorable for the formation of the oxyhemoglobin. Whereas in the tissue where the low PO2, high PCO2, high hydrogen ion concentration, and higher temperature exist, the conditions are favorable for dissociation of oxygen from the oxyhemoglobin. This clearly indicates that O2 gets bound to the hemoglobin in lungs surface and get dissociated in the tissues. Every 100 ml of the oxygenated blood can deliver about 5 ml of O2 to the tissues under the normal physiological conditions. Now discuss the transport of carbon dioxide. CO2 is carried by the hemoglobin as carbamino hemoglobins, about 20 to 25%. This binding is related to the partial pressure of CO2. PO2 is a major factor which could affect the binding, whereas PCO2 is high and PO2 is low as in the tissue. More binding of carbon dioxide occurs, whereas when the PCO2 is low and PO2 is high as in the alveoli, dissociations of CO2 from the carboamino hemoglobin takes place. That is, CO2 which is bound to hemoglobins from the tissue is delivered at the alveoli. RBC contain a very high concentration of enzymes, carbonic anhydrase, and minute quantities of the same in the present in the plasma too. This enzyme facilitates the following reactions in both directions. At the tissue sites where the partial pressure of CO2 is high due to the catabolism, CO2 diffuses into blood, RBC and plasma and form a carbonate and the hydrogen ions. At the alveolar sites where the PCO2 is low, now discuss the regulation of the respiration. Human beings have a significant ability to maintain the moderate respiratory rhythm to suit the demand of the body tissues. This is done by the neural systems. Inspiratory center, expiratory center, and the pneumothoracic pneuma centers control. A special center present in the medulla region, the brain called the respiratory rhythm center is the primary responsible for these regulations. Another centers present in the pons region of the brain called the pneumotaxic center can moderate the function of the respiratory rhythm centers. Neural signals from these centers can reduce the duration of the inspiration and thereby after the respiratory rate. A chemosensitive area is situated adjacent to the rhythms. Now we'll discuss the disorder of the respiratory system. Asthma is a difficulty in breathing causing wheezing due to the inflammation of bronchi and bronchioles. This is the asthma. And now emphysema is a chronic disorder in which alveolar walls are damaged, due to which respiratory surface is decreased. One of the major cause of this is the cigarette smoking. Thank you. Have a good day.